worked in a hostel, and I saw an increasing number of men coming out from prison who'd been in prison for sexual offences. I noticed the level of hostility that these men coming into the hostel were experiencing. I then moved into treatment, and my main responsibility was working on life skills and strategies. So I spent the whole time in treatment saying it's really important that you have support in your local community. It's really important that you have people that you can share your strategies with. And I realised that I was talking to a large amount of people who had no family, no friends, no local connections, and actually that everything I was doing in treatment was pretty much meaningless unless they were going into a local community where they had a network.
Having been in prison for 6.5 years by the time I was released, the way things had gone generally in the media and seeing the news and so on, and within myself, I felt that prisoners generally are isolated from society, and in my circumstances I felt even more isolated. So really anything that was offered to me that had potential to help me reintegrate, I'd go for. People come out of prison just not knowing. It's one thing being in prison for, say, 2 months. Totally different thing being in prison for 6.5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Yeah. Okay, you've got access to the news on the television, but it's like watching the world through a pinhole camera. You just don't know about everything else, and it can be a big shock when you come out.
I think with my first circle, it started fairly dramatically, and the core member made a serious attempt on his life in the first 3 weeks. It took a very, very long time to build him up again. Unfortunately, he was outed on social media, and he was attacked in the street on 2 occasions, and his mood sank lower and lower and lower, and we had to build him up again. But then by Christmas just gone, we all went out for a pizza together. It was essentially his main Christmas event. He had nobody to spend Christmas with, and to sit there with him and pull a cracker and exchange presents and eat together, and to see him having moved on so far from those very, very dark days to becoming a confident person again with a smile on his face was hugely rewarding.
One of the problems with sexual harm is that it has an isolating effect. And so it's the fact of members of the community coming forward and saying, look, we can help with this. We don't shun you because of what's happened. It's not an unqualified non-judgment, but what we're judging is behaviour, not the person.
I think the biggest positive effect overall in each of the circles is an increase in someone's confidence and their self-belief. And although that might seem like quite a small thing, that really is so important for all elements of their life moving forward. I really believe that's because they're actually seeing that people believe in them and believe in their capacity to change, and it's hard for them to deny that because these people are volunteers.
Being told something by a circle volunteer means something more to me than it would have been if I'd been told it by any number of professionals in prison. They might say, "You did really well there, that's good, you're making good progress." Yeah, but it's your job to tell me that. It's not the volunteer's job to tell me that. It occurred to me that, before I offended, I had self-esteem problems. But perhaps more dangerous is the fact that if your self-esteem is greater than your self-confidence, that leaves quite a large gap for people to fall into. And you do all the programs, you feel a lot better about yourself, and you're right, I'm ready to go now. And yet, perhaps you're thinking, yeah, but I've still got this stigma that I'm carrying around with me. And so your sense of your worth is greater than your sense of being able to make any use of that worth. And that's probably one of the hardest things to deal with. So with the circle, helping my self-confidence and being able to help other people with their self-confidence, perhaps that's, if you like, that's a direct means of helping to reduce reoffending. Rather than, we say, scaremongering, it would be helpful if the public were made aware that, yes, I'm not trying to minimise what I did, it shouldn't have happened, and people were quite right to expect protection from people who were capable of doing what I did. But it doesn't mean, I'm a person, they should turn up outside my house with pitchforks and torches every night. I'm someone who basically I'd never want to get involved in anything like that ever again. If people were aware and they didn't have fear imposed on them every day, we might have perhaps a more balanced, a more rational society.
I feel everybody gets lumped together. If somebody's committed a sexual offence, people automatically think that they're a paedophile. People automatically think that somebody is going to be likely to snatch their child. People still persist in thinking that their children are in imminent danger from strangers. It's very taxing thinking about how things could be different. I think the media has a role in more responsible reporting and portrayal of people, and I think as a community we need to take some responsibility for the fact that if this is selling newspapers, then we need to look at ourselves for buying the newspapers. We need to get better at talking about sexual matters, full stop, and we need to get better at talking to our children about how to keep themselves safe, how to report anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, and I think we're not very good as a community at doing that.
From day one, really, I just thought this was a great idea, and the idea has expanded from just working with offenders into working in all sorts of other areas of the impact of sexual harm, and it seems to work wherever it goes.
Young people who display harmful behaviour, their default position is to deny, and in some instances to feel quite shameful about their behaviours. So having members of the community to come in and support those young people is quite a powerful thing. The general consensus is that there has been some dysfunction in terms of their family structure, but also their experiences in terms of experiencing some trauma or abuse themselves.
The other thing people often think is this is all about some sort of wonderful therapy with a capital T. Mm-hmm. Actually, the majority of these children need core provision, whether it's educational or social or other meeting, before anything else. And often what other professionals think is that they need therapy with a capital T, which, of course, usually means the idea of therapy with a capital T is that someone takes them away and talks to them. And these often are the most difficult to engage young people in terms of talking. Certainly, it's extremely difficult for them often to actually access their feelings and emotions. So the idea that one can sort of magically do that in that way, separate from everything else, and that important thing that you do, which is getting alongside, it needs to be worked with, because very rarely is that sort of input the single most important thing.
A nuclear bomb exploded in my family.
My sister organised to meet up with Kathy to tell me that my husband had been sexually abusing her daughter. I believed my sister instantaneously. I was frustrated and annoyed that she had made this bad choice and that it would cause so much pain.
I'm working with a lady at the moment. Her partner of 10 plus years had been sexually abusing her daughter. She was met with a lot of judgment, a lot of blame. People could not, for the life of them, believe or understand how such abuse could be happening in the home without mum knowing what was happening. And so she kind of started to internalise some of that kind of self-blame. So a lot of the work that we've kind of been doing has been helping her look at the ways in which he was able to abuse without detection. She needs to fully understand how and why this happened, because she also needs to learn to kind of trust her instincts again, to be able to kind of form healthy relationships with people.
I want to belong to a society that believes that people can change, that we can face the truth, and that there is hope. And I believe that Circle can bring hope in a situation that hope is difficult to find and often in our society thinks it's hopeless.
I think in the past we didn't really look at the victims of some of these rather unpleasant crimes, and as a result of it the crimes went on very often. I think we're far better nationally, and certainly Thames Valley as a police force, we're far more sympathetic now to this sort of crime. Our police officers, I think, are much better educated in how to deal with them. We see, ever more cases, but I think this is probably not because there are many more cases, but because we know how to deal with them better, and we have the right support systems within charities, such as Circles, to deal with this sort of crime now. To individual victims, it makes a huge difference. And of course, very often the perpetrators of these sort of crimes do it because they themselves are victims, and that's no excuse. But it is a cycle very often, and it's breaking that cycle that I believe is very important, and I think Circles does address that.
Some of my clients struggle just to do everyday tasks like going to the shop and buy bread, because they would get panicky around a lot of people. They feel under attack, they're hyper-vigilant. It took a while for them actually to say it out loud, because what I found that for a lot of them, when they say it out loud, it makes it real, and a lot of them don't want it to be real, because whatever they have to live through, they cope by blocking it and forgetting it and never mention it again and pretend it's never happened. But unfortunately it doesn't work. Eventually it will come to the surface. I think counseling with me helped that person to overcome these little obstacles, and understanding what is going on and learning how to reality check to see whether he's in danger, whether he needs to run, whether he needs to fight, or is it just a very normal day and he's in Tesco just buying milk.
Tackling sexual abuse is everybody's business, and if we can't talk about it and if we can't make people aware of what we're trying to do, then we're not succeeding in our job and our task, and we will continue to push those boundaries.
Right from the off, I was really passionate about it, and I have to say, 12 years in, I'm as passionate about it as I was on the first day.
In my early 20s, talking about working in the hostel, working with a group of men who I felt were excluded. I was always constantly challenged as being quite young in this profession, that well, you can do that job now because you don't have children. But I'm now in my 40s, I've got 2 children, and I think they contribute more to my motivation now than ever. And it's the fact that I want to have and live and be involved in a safe community, and I'm not prepared to sit back and do nothing about it. I'm surrounded by an amazing team of professionals, of staff, of volunteers, and I continue to hear the stories of volunteers engaging core members and the difference they're making, and core member statements. I still find them as moving now as I did when I read them when I first started, and I'm not done.